Good morning, good afternoon, good night. It really depends on the place you are. You can see that I came to Phoenix, Arizona, the United States. Why I came here? Because I wanted to talk with my old friend, Karolyn Benger. She's a very interesting woman. We will see here why we are talking now. And when we say we, because it's a big community talking with Karolyn, and we need to remember that we are in Café with Cabana, sponsored by the German Jewish Museum in Santiago, Chile. So welcome to the show, Karolyn. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I am doing very well, Baruch Hashem. How are you?
Very good. And I want to tell the audience who is Karolyn. And I'm very proud to tell my visitors, my viewers, that Karolyn is a student at the Yeshivat Maharat. And she will be ready by 2026. So, Baruch Hashem. Congrats. Also, she was the executive director of the Jewish Community Relations Council in Phoenix, Arizona, and also the executive director of the Jewish Interest Free Loan in Atlanta. So, she has some experience. And but I will let Karolyn to tell about her experience in the Jewish life, because there's a lot to tell about this idea. So, please, Karolyn, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. By way of background, I guess I'll say I entered graduate school. I had no intention of becoming a rabbi. In those years, it wasn't even an option in the Orthodox world. And I entered graduate school with the studies in political science focusing on Middle Eastern studies. And my focus in particular was Islamist organizations. And I studied and interviewed with the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, did my research fieldwork out there. And I spent several years teaching at various universities in the States. And over time, I came to realize that the academia wasn't necessarily a great fit for many reasons, including what I saw the writing on the wall vis-a-vis certain departments not being very friendly for a Zionist. And so I left academia and I went into my passion, which is also the Jewish community, where I served the Jewish community with free loan, working with issues of poverty and Jews in need, and then Jewish Community Relations Council, where I got to serve on social justice issues, representing the Jewish community. But I always missed teaching. And around that time, I became aware that Maharat was not only existed at this point, but it was allowing students to participate via Zoom, meaning I didn't have to move to Riverdale, New York. And I said that this is my opportunity, and it was the perfect merger. My dream with being a rabbi really is the perfect merger of my love of teaching from academia that I learned with my passion for the Jewish community and social justice issues, and really merging them together, which I hope I will be able to do in my rabbinate in 2 years.
No, I know that it will do it, but while you were telling us your background, I can imagine that it's a good mix to be a teacher and to be someone who is it's helping, is growing with the community. So becoming a rabbi, it will be just a good combination to do that. So I'm great. It was a good decision. So and let's talk about a little bit about when you did all this political science, and when you specialized in Middle East and you studied Arab and Islamist opposition groups in Egypt. What were your feelings when you were studying, and what did you take out from those research and those studies?
Well, what I took out from it is would fill more than the whole podcast time slot. So I'll sparse it. I'll sparse it down. I spent time in Egypt, which I will say I absolutely loved. I absolutely loved my time in Egypt. The Egyptian people were very warm and friendly, but I did hide the fact that I was Jewish. I was taught by my advisor, my mentor, who is also a Jewish American woman who studied Islamist. I studied under her, and she advised me that when asked by people I will be interviewing, by these Islamists that or even non-Islamists, if they ask me if I am Jewish, that my answer should be, I am descended from Jews, but I reject the state of Israel. Is that right? Yes, 100%. This is the line.
Whoa.
Yes, and it's very interesting because, the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt is touted as being this moderate Islamist movement by many in academia, because they've renounced violence and since the assassination of Sadat, and because they do so much social work with the people, et cetera, et cetera. But if you study, which what I did is studying how the internal organization works and really studying their material and what they say. First of all, it's extremely dictatorial. Once the party makes a decision, everybody has to hold in line to that position. But what's more troubling is, yes, they renounced violence, except for three conditions. And these conditions are, if you are Jewish, if you are Jewish against Israel or against any Westerner, really, who's kind of quote unquote occupying the region.
It doesn't care for them if you are from UK, from France, from let's say from Chile. If you're in a Western country, I mean, they will be against. Is that right?
Yes, not if you're a tourist. I don't think that they care so. I mean, my life isn't threatened, but if you were, so to speak, to set up camp and remain, that would be a problem. Yes.
And how long did you stay in Egypt in order to make all this research?
I was in Egypt for it was a long time ago. I want to say maybe 2 or 3 months.
And did you have the chance to really see how the Egyptians, besides this brotherhood, how they live, what they think about Israel? I'm talking about the common guy who's walking in any streets.
The common Egyptian, not the Muslim Brotherhood. Yeah, the common Egyptian is not a fan of Israel for the most part. It's not very much so. No, absolutely not. They do not like the state of Israel. Very much opposed to it. In fact, to the extent that in Egypt, which used to have a large Jewish community up until 48, 56, 67, when they were all kind of kicked out. The community in Cairo, which is where I was, has it's probably changed today, but at the time had about 40 Jewish families, and they had a synagogue. And I went to the synagogue, and I remember wanting to take a picture, and a security guard wouldn't let me for security reasons. They protect that synagogue because there is a threat there.
Wow. And is there any other kind of miscellaneous thing that you can tell from the Brotherhood? What you learn over there? Because there should be many details on that.
I would say that I learned that they're very strategic. I don't think that should come as a shock to anybody, but they're very strategic. They're very smart in terms of using the system and using their popularity. And I think, and this is a broader assessment, but I think that academics and politicians would do well to listen to what they have to say and take them at their words and not try and interpret their words through a Western lens, accept what they're saying for what it is.
Yes, and it's very important. This is very important because when you talk with somebody from the West, we are from the West, and we don't know how the Middle East works, also other places in the East. We do not understand the way they behave, the way they think, the way they eat, the way they raise their families, and it's a totally different thing. Yeah, I have had the opportunity to be in many Muslim countries, and I have felt the touch of the way they think, and it's so different. So what you said, Karolyn, it is very important that I would like to invite people from the U.S., politicians from the U.S., teachers from the U.S., to travel and to see what is the difference between staying in the West, walking in the West, going to a restaurant in the West, and do the same things in the Middle East. And when you feel the difference between one to the other, then you start understanding what is happening today, not only Middle East, and also in other places around the world. And this is a big difference. So I know you can tell us a lot about this.
Yeah, when you drink their coffee and you eat their food and you walk down their streets, you get a sense of their culture. In Arabic, thaqafa. you get a sense of it, and you can start to try to understand through their eyes how they see the world, and it is different from the West. And I'm not saying this in a subjective, normative,
No.
That one is better than the other. I'm not saying that.
No.
I'm just saying that they are different. And if we're going to have any kind of understanding or even begin to talk about reconciliation, then we need to know how they think, and don't assume that their priorities are necessarily the same as our priorities.
Because they are not the same priorities.
No.
And well, let me go further in this conversation, and something that it makes me very curious about Karolyn is that she was able to see years ago what's going to happen or what is happening today in the American universities. How Islamists, how is the Antisemitism in the universities, and how did you come, and maybe because you were traveling to Egypt, maybe how did you get that view about what's going to happen in universities?
Well, to be clear, I did not predict the encampments or anything like that. But I did see the writing on the wall in terms of anti-Semitism. And I would say, I think that it's fair to say that I felt touches of it when I was a student myself in various classes and courses, even back in undergrad, but certainly in graduate school. When you're studying the field that I'm in, focusing on the Middle East, there is a dominant view that is not Zionist. And I definitely felt it, certain comments, certain things. And of course you have to weigh, is it worth saying something or not? And that gets its own challenges, but more than
this, teachers or the students?
Both.
Okay.
And what's more than this is when you're on the career path and you're looking where can I teach? Where can I go? And you start looking at the departments and you start seeing who's there, and you look at what they write and what they say, and you're realizing that the pool of departments that you could be in diminishes and diminishes, because there's a certain, one, do you want to be in that environment yourself, which maybe you're fine with or not, or two, would they even consent to have you there if the department is dominated like that? Noam Chomsky is here in Arizona. I want to say is it U of A or NAU, something like that. It's not a department that would necessarily be friendly to me.
And so you look what is happening today. It's because of the way that people behave, years ago, on the way that they were, telling things and the department were working. Is that because it was a lot of funding from other places that, they went with those funds to tell teachers and to tell students about what they were thinking about the Islamic people around the world? It's kind of that.
I think there's a combination of variables, combination of factors. I think that I personally think one of the major conditions that led to this was the pervasive worldview, post-colonialism mindset, postmodernism. I'm not going to get into all the meta theories, but postmodernism that's permeated so many departments and much of academia. I think all of that together, and yes, the funding. So much of our Middle Eastern Studies departments have been funded in the past by Saudi Arabia and other countries who, in those years, were not signing Abrahamic Accords, and it led to, and I think it did lead to a certain confluence of values. Also, I should say that in academia, what I found, and I think what most people are starting to to pick up on today, for all of the talk of admiring free speech and liberal values, big L liberal values, it's not necessarily true in practice. There is a lot of self-censoring and a lot of censoring that happens. People are scared to speak out if they don't hold a certain view. For example, when I heard anti-Zionist statements, vehemently anti-Israeli statements in class, sometimes I also wouldn't necessarily speak up because, again, is it worth it? So I saw all of these things happening, and when they all came together and merged with this dominant idea that, the post-colonialism idea, and then of course Israel's always vilified as the modern day colonist, and I keep having to remind people: have you ever heard of the Arab Caliphate? Have you ever heard of the Arab empires? They were all colonists, and Israel as the ethno state. When again, I look at the map and I say, look at all these countries that are exclusively filled with only Arabs. Who is the ethno state? But facts don't matter, and it's a hard sell.
Yeah, and it's important to say that if those guys, teachers, professors, and students, if they travel to Middle East and they feel what you have felt before, they will see the difference between who is the oppressor and who is, and you will see the difference between when you have a dictatorship like the Brotherhood. This is what you need to do. That's it. And if you go to Israel and you see the democracy with Arabs in the parliament, there is a big difference between the two. But 100%. When you don't know that because you have not felt that, there's no way, because it's social media, it's the TV, you are looking you're looking movies and you're looking actors, but you don't see the reality behind the movie and also the actors. So it's nice for them, to go on protest because they see the movie.
I'm going to add that most people don't know history. Most people, even, and this is what breaks my heart, Jews, fellow Jews, they don't know the history of the region. And so they're not armed with enough knowledge to be able to combat some of the accusations that are being hurled that are just plain fiction. And they're not able to really take a stand. If so many of these movements are people who are feminists, are people who are pro-LGBTQ rights, so on and so forth. You cannot be a feminist and you cannot be for LGBTQ rights and be against Israel. It doesn't work.
I would like to invite those feminist groups at the LGBT to go to either Iran or to be, in one little place in Gaza. What it will happen to them just for 6 hours.
Even Jordan. It's horrific. Yes. It's horrific.
Yep.
And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And I would wish that they study history and that they pay attention to what's going on to minorities on the ground in these countries.
Yeah, but there's hope. And there's a lot of hope about the future, because we have been in this process many, many times and many, I would say, centuries. So it's hope. And why is hope? Because I know you also go and attend some interfaith groups. And there's a lot to talk about this one. You've been to Hindi, you've been to other groups. But you got the word. Tell us what you're doing. And I know there's some really good commonalities between the two groups. And, we think a little bit about the Hindus and we have a little bit about the Islamics, but you have the word now.
Thank you. Yes, I have been involved with the Arizona Interfaith Movement, which is one of two interfaith organizations here in the state. And I've been very privileged as a result of my activism there to meet some incredible people from different faiths. And we have bonded and built bridges and found commonalities among us. As some of you may know, here in Arizona, we have a very, very large Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, more commonly referred to as Mormons. We have a huge Mormon community here. And I have been very blessed to meet many people in that community and call quite a few of them really close friends. It's been fascinating to learn the similarities between our two faiths, very similar. To the extent that some of the garments that they wear under their clothes, I would say, are very similar to the tzitzit that Jewish men wear, among other commonalities that are really fascinating to hear about and to observe. I've had the pleasure of making connections to dear Muslim friends, who obviously we have so much in common with Islam. Their following of Sharia is very, very similar to our following of Halakha. Obviously, we have our differences politically, but when it comes to the religion, we share so much, and we're so joined and connected. I have, as you mentioned, I have relationships with people in the Hindu community as well as the Sikh community. Absolutely fascinated by their faiths, and interesting similarity. One Sukkot. It was Sukkot time during COVID. I did an event on Zoom where I invited everyone into my sukkah, and my husband and I explained about the sukkah, and we explained about the lulav and the etrog, and we talked about the pitom on the etrog and how it has to be attached; it can't be broken. And the Hindu representative mentioned that they also have something where they use, I want to say it was a coconut, and it has to have certain amounts of hairs on it, and if it doesn't have enough, they can't use it. So things of this nature where we have so much more in common. Food. I was explaining to the Hindu representative about kashrut, and there are different levels, there are different ways people keep kashrut, and I was explaining, what my level was and how it works, and she was telling me about her level and her father-in-law's level, that he won't even eat somewhere where the food wasn't prepared by an observant Hindu. And I said, oh, yes, we have the same in our tradition.
So when we are looking about this interfaith and kind of big, if we can call it the transactions between the way we think and the way others think, and you see all these similarities, you can see that the world should be nicer in the future. But there is one important thing. We need to study. We need to study history. We need to open our eyes. We also need to listen to others. So if we put all this in a blender, I think that we do have some. We have big hope in order to have a better world for the future. So you are doing a great thing with these groups. Please keep going. And any other interesting action with this interfaith group that you can share with the audience? Because you should have many.
I have had many interactions that are fascinating. Oh my goodness, off the top of my head, of course, nothing's coming, but I'll share another commonality. This actually wasn't through my interfaith work. It was when I was with the JCRC. And we did an event on Martin Luther King Jr.'s Junior Day. And we showcased a documentary called Strange Fruit. And Strange Fruit is a song made famous by Nina Simone, very powerful in the African American community. It's about lynching. And the documentary highlights this song and its trajectory to fame and its importance in the African American community. And it also highlights how it was written by a Jewish man. It was written by a Jewish man, and the connections between our two minority communities. And they talked about this, and it was beautiful to see. And the audience was around 200 people. I'd say 50-50 Jewish and African American. And, these two communities have kind of grown apart in recent years. And to have this opportunity to bring us back together was a really powerful experience. And I highly recommend to anybody, if you have the chance, watch the documentary Strange Fruit. Phenomenal.
Great. Karolyn, if we're talking about the future, do you have any perspective, views about what do you think it will be the future?
Oh goodness. If you're talking about the future,
First of all, you need to
Jewish
finish your
community.
studies. I mean, I'm looking towards 2026. I will call you and say, Karolyn, we need to have another café con Kavana because you have finished and we need to congrats you, blah, 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 blah. So, but besides you finish your studies at the yeshiva.
I will, well, thank you. And please God, yes. And I will speak about what I think of the future of the Jewish community, at least the American Jewish community.
Yes.
And I see and I don't think this is all that shocking for anyone who's paying attention to it all, but I think the future of the American Jewish community is one that's going to be post-denominational. I see a lot of Jews who are less concerned with labels, less concerned if you're Reform or conservative or Orthodox, and they're more interested in, for lack of a better word, the vibe. and I think that Jewish Americans, I think Jewish leadership needs to create more spaces that are open and accessible, regardless of labels, and just really be open and active. I find that there's so much desire to be more active, especially since October 7th. And activism, active Jewish ritual life, however the people understand it, not imposed on them that this is what we have to do, but what they wish to take on, and to really create spaces that enable them to do that, help them do that, without pushing them to do anything that they're not interested in.
I mean, I was really surprised about this answer. You need to go to Congress, huh? Because I mean, with that answer, I mean, it's great. Well, we are almost there. I would like to thank Karolyn Benger to be here in a coffee with Kavana. It has been a great podcast. We have been sharing too many different views about your stay in Egypt. Then we came back to the States. It has been great. And again, thank you very much. And I will like to remember my audience that we are in YouTube, we are in Spotify. You can watch us, you can listen to us while you are driving to the office. I mean, there are many options. And again, Karolyn, thank you very much for your time. And thank you, Arizona. You are a great host, and I hope to see you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.